Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, FooTube influencer and Grand Poobah Fraser, Sejohn Sarowik. Hey, Sejohn!
Yo. Just remember, I was your first biggest fan.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say.
Oh man. Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, you started this ball, so let's just get into it.
I started this ball because the title of the episode, as the listener sees, is Sejohn will become a Street Fighter. And we have a hard out today, so there's a timer's gonna go off, and we're gonna have to stop like right when that happens. So if there's one topic I wanted to make sure we covered in this episode, it is my immersion into Street Fighter 6 after waking up, Jesus, at 3 a.m. to Sejohn will become a Street Fighter. I was sent at 2:11 a.m. It did not wake me up. I don't want people to think that Sejohn's waking me up with texts. But I haven't been sleeping well, right? Here's the thing, is how I change the topic. My room is not equipped for an air conditioner right now because we've been moving some stuff around. Dale needed to clear out her space for when it was her at-home office, and so some of that stuff wound up in my room, and it just needs to be shuffled out because if I were to put an air conditioner in my room right now or a dehumidifier or anything, it would do literally nothing for me.
Yeah,
it would all get.
Yeah, funny thing about the goddamn air conditioner. We're dealing with that on this end too. Is we made some changes over the last year in the house about where things are, and we just realized like, well, shit, we've made the air conditioners somewhat useless or unobtainable. Like we cannot get to the windows that would need to be installed in.
Yeah, exactly. And mine is I can get to the window, but then all of the air would be stopped in its circulation, even in a small space like a bedroom, from doing anything. And I don't know about you. Like, this could just be my own personal bias here. I feel like air conditioners are less effective now than they were, like, I'm going to say 3 years ago.
Well, I mean, I like the sad answer to that is global warming. Shit's getting hotter. There's more things going on, and air conditioners can't keep up. Like, is the sad truth about it. But I do think that if we're going to continue to talk about air conditioners, we do need to take a moment to explain to our friends across the pond what an air conditioner is, because all I've been hearing this year is about how we don't have air conditioning in England.
So it was 2009, right? Where I went to. It was this week in 2009. Just ironically, for this everything happening.
2009.
I went there for a cruise to Norway, and we arrived on July 4th, which there's just something that feels great about arriving in the UK on July 4th as an American.
Just as you put a foot down, were you like, we're back?
I was too tired is the truth of it. Jet lag hit me really hard that first day, which is crazy because when I would then later visit Will in 2014, I don't think I slept for 72 hours.
I feel like we could put together a really good Cousin Eddie, like, National Lampoon story about him going to England and him and the family going to England for the 4th of July. Like, somehow that just happens to them, right? And, like, now's the time. Like, let's reboot Cousin Eddie. Like, who could we get in there? Like,
yes. That's the big question, is who could we get in there? I don't know. The problem with a character like Cousin Eddie is you need somebody as unhinged as Randy Quaid to do it. And the unhinged people have all kind of bubbled to the surface. And then we took one of those knives and just kind of sloughed it off like baristas. We got rid of that crazy foam.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, it's not that Cousin Eddie as a character, as problematic as this character was, it's not that I feel like that was what we kind of wanted to get, like, rid of, right? It's just like the creative bullshit that you would need to have to portray it definitely is just something you just can't be nowadays. You should not be anymore, right?
Right. It's not even something that you should not be. It's one of those situations where, like, even if they cast the role, they shoot the film, and then right as the film releases, something crazy is going to come to the surface about the person who plays the new Cousin Eddie. It's just how it seems
Cousin
to
Eddie
happen.
they must have had Cousin Eddie in the new Vacation reboot.
No, they didn't.
Interesting.
It was they had older Audrey and Rusty, and older Audrey was Leslie Mann married to Chris Hemsworth, which worked on so many levels. And then you had Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo coming back, which Beverly D'Angelo is going to be important in a little bit. But also, let's take exactly 1 second to mourn the fact that Chevy Chase won't be in the Community movie, because his character's dead.
Right.
Like, how would he have come back?
I mean, a ghost, right? Like,
Right.
which is not out of the realm of possibility. / didn't they even do that?
Yeah, which is also something that could still happen, even though Chevy Chase isn't going to be in it. If Abed looks and sees Force ghosts and pierces one of them, and then he just shakes his head and it disappears. Like,
that would be all we need anyway.
Yeah, that's all that you would ever get.
But sorry, Cousin Eddie landed in England on the 4th of July. That was where we jumped off.
So I'm Cousin Eddie in this scenario, whatever. So we in there, and there were all of these warnings about how the temperature was higher, and it was 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which for our fans across the pond, 70 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius.
This is really showing a lot of ignorance on our part today.
Well, I mean, can you do that in your head?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I'm saying we were both in that same boat, my friend.
It's 21 degrees Celsius. Okay. So that's the temperature that they're dealing with. And they're like, please make sure you stay hydrated. Like, we're going through a heat wave right now. And, you know, you hear that as somebody who, like, 70 degrees, that sounds like a lovely day for July. Yeah. And it wasn't terrible, but they are not equipped to deal with it. And while we were riding on the tube, a woman collapsed. Like, she would just, like, all of these things about stay hydrated and everything. It was a younger woman, and she just collapsed. And someone hit the emergency, and it was a whole thing. And that was kind of the nicest thing about it. Because if someone collapses on the subway in New York, right? If they're seated the way that this woman is, someone's walking by throwing their body on the ground and taking their seat. That's not what happened in London. And that felt kind of nice.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not this is not me saying, like, get over it, babies. It's that it has become kind of the online kind of, like, echo. Every time somebody over here talks about how hot it is and, like, an AC unit of any kind, installing an AC unit, oh, it's that time of year, right? The very first thing that somebody has to say is, you know, in the rest of the world, they don't even use air conditioning. You guys are just, it's like, what? We're the babies for using air conditioning. And it's like, what's going on?
I don't know.
We have a very specific type of climate out here, and we have figured out a way to combat it. Like, that's ingenuity. That's not, what are you talking about?
All I think of is the fact that California was literally built in a desert, and everything there wants to kill them. And they're just like, not California, LA specifically. It was built in a desert. Everything there wants to kill the civilization. And they're just like, no, we got this. We're down. We're down with that.
For good or for ill, we will succeed.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, so that's to go back to a whole ridiculous thing. But yeah, it's one of those situations where I haven't been sleeping well because I'll go to sleep as, like, it kind of gets to a manageable moment, and then as it starts to warm up, I wake up, and I can't get back to sleep because now it's hot. And I've done, like, some of those things that other people do to mitigate not having air conditioning. I now have bamboo sheets on my bed, which I am happy to tell you, the cooling effect of bamboo sheets is 100% true. That is not just something they're trying to sell you on.
That's fucking rad. You know, like, because there's so much of that kind of shit in the world, especially, man, you want to talk about, like, bed sheets, the bullshit about, like, Egyptian cotton and thread counts and all of that stuff, and how over the years we have really learned that a lot of that stuff is not even untrue, but the effects of those things, or the reported effects of those things, are so minuscule that it's really not worth the extra $200 some people will shell out for entire bed sets, right?
Yeah.
And to hear that one of those things is true is rad.
And it was great. And I it's like a $30 set because I'm just like, I'd like to try this and see what happens. And it will be like, even when it's still very humid and, like, I have to try to sleep because it's 2 a.m. and I have to be at work at 7, I will lay down and within, like, 10 minutes, I feel cooler. So, like, it disperses the heat of the body in this way. That's really interesting. But we're here to talk about Street Fighter, and we need to talk about Street Fighter because after receiving the 2 a.m. text from Sejohn, reading it at 3 a.m. and being like, I'm gonna deal with that tomorrow morning. I'm like, what does that mean? I will admit, I did look up like a couple of the local shops to see where it was affordable, and I'm just like, I can't. I don't want to buy this game. That's where I started. That's where everybody needs to know I started with Street Fighter 6 is I cannot buy this game. And luckily, here's your shout out. My buddy Mark has a copy of the game. And when I asked him if I could borrow it for the show in exchange for a shout out, he immediately agreed and said that he lives for shout outs. So Mark, here's your shout out. Thank you so much for providing me with Street Fighter 6. Even though Now here's some huge spoilers for the end of this conversation. I now feel like I need to buy Street Fighter 6.
I want to warn Mark. Don't live your whole life just doing what everybody will give you a shout out. Like, don't do that. You because next thing you know, you're gonna be giving up your house just because Mr. Beast wanted to say hi. There's something about Street Fighter 6 that seemed to have hooked me. I know exactly what it is. I was, in my online life, just kind of taking in a lot of stuff that had been going on recently, and Street Fighter 6 was popping up here or there, but I finally watched somebody actually play it, and specifically focusing on the character creation aspects of it. And when I learned that it was based on the RE engine, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. There is a character creator as in depth as this, like, that I was seeing, that is from the same engine that Resident Evil 7 and 8 were based on. I was like, that's nuts to me. There's something about it because and the 2 remakes, right? Like 2 and 3 were both and 4, right?
Every game post Resident Evil 7 has been developed in the RE engine.
Even that like weird like multiplayer one that they've got. Though it's like the 1v4 one. We have talked about like the looks of those games before, right? I one of the biggest things about these remakes and 7 and 8 that I just really adore is that they look gorgeous and gross because like for what they need to be, right? For those games, like they're able to really be horrific looking games, and that is due to this new technology. And I was like, well, I got to get my hands on that. Like, so it wasn't even a matter of, man, I really need to get into Street Fighter this time, right? Because I'll be honest, like, I don't know fuck all about Street Fighter. I know a little bit about Mortal Kombat, both in story and in concepts of things like the things that they've done over the years to manipulate or add to it, or take some stuff away. Like I could talk a little shop about Mortal Kombat, like, and I can follow a conversation if somebody else is really getting into it. I couldn't do fuck for Street Fighter. We've probably talked about this before. I am so far removed from Street Fighter that it's not my fighting game. But man, I was like, if I could get in there and do some silly ass shit, like, I don't know, say build Leon Kennedy to go through Street Fighter with, that is worth the price of admission for me, right? And then I grabbed the game, right? I picked up the game the day after, like when I had sent that to you after I had learned that, and I had looked at my fund budget for the next few months and was like, can I afford to drop $60 on a game? Because I was like, I'm not doing, like, at the very least, if this is the reason I'm coming to this game, we're not going whole hog on this one. I'm not doing the $105 version. I'm not putting in like Zenny points or whatever the fuck else they want me to buy. But I will snag the base game, right, and see where we're at. And so I loaded this game up the other day. This had to have been Friday, I think, right? Because I think I purchased it Thursday night, and by the time my old PS4 Pro finally was able to get the damn thing loaded up and running, it was Friday morning. And I have not stopped like fucking around in this game. And fucking around specifically. I don't feel like I am focused in any one way. I'm not being drawn towards any particular aspect of this game. But like, I have not stopped finding stuff to just do in this game, up to and including like the character creation stuff that I have fooled around with a bit.
Yeah. So just as an anecdote to Sejohn's lack of knowledge regarding Street Fighter, I would really like to do a very special episode on the Street Fighter movie. I know that it's going to be like a scene out of To Kill a Mockingbird to try to convince him to do that. That's something like you get like 80% Devon Decker on an episode of the Stay Report because the other 20% is still building the case that will be argued for. Let's do a Street Fighter. Let's do the Street Fighter movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme as a very special episode, or at the very least a time capsule siege.
I mean, like, I'll do it for Raul Julia alone, you know? Like
I mean, that was going to be my solid argument, and then I'd follow it up with a little bit of Ming-Na Wen.
I mean, yeah, there's all sorts of really good stuff in that movie that is fun to talk about, but none of it is going to come from a love of Street Fighter, right? And I think that's going to be like the biggest thing about that movie that people probably would expect us to talk about, and I would expect like us to eventually address, is just how fucking buck wild that movie is on its own. And then the fact that like it's not even it is toned down in its weirdness from the game, and a lot of people take offense to that because they're like, well, there's some weird shit that happens in this game, like Blanca being his friend that's like mutated, right? Am I remembering that being a huge plot point in that movie?
That's the thing in the movie, and
yeah, and like
from
it's
the
not
game.
a thing in the games, yeah, yeah. But like they do it in a way to kind of ground you in trusting Blanca and there being a friendship there, because in the games Blanca is like, he's not like the villain of these games. Like that's not how it works, right? So
he's basically the Bobby Boucher of the Street Fighter universe. I love my mama very much, and now you know that.
yeah, like so in order to like introduce this like horrific character in the movie, but still have people kind of have like sympathy for him, like the way that they build that is they make it be like Jean-Claude Van Damme's friend that is just the stories of Street Fighter are so much weirder and wilder, and this game, oh my god, this game is so unapologetically just goofy. I mean, like, I'm still fighting guys with cardboard boxes on their heads. Is that just going to be a thing for the rest of this game?
Okay,
like,
so
I don't. Is that a normal thing in Street Fighter? Is this
that's
a known,
new?
Like,
that is a new thing. The cardboard boxes are new. Here's where I'm gonna ask for some grounding. What level is your character in the World Tour mode? Because we're talking about the World Tour mode, this sort of open world.
Yeah,
I want to learn what strength is.
So I'm only level 20. I've just been kind of just exploring around it, but I have leveled my Luke, because you can then also within your leveling you can sub level types, right? And that's based on masters.
Yeah, here's what
sorry, go ahead.
Here's what Street Fighter 6 is at its basest level. Street Fighter 6 is Pokemon if you were the Pokemon. Yeah. And you go out you find trainers, and as you work with those trainers and level up with the trainers, you learn new moves. Very much like Pokemon.
And the way that you do that, and I think this is the thing, this is the key that has made me kind of really adore this game and not put it down, is the way that you level yourself up, and maybe this is something that's been in past Street Fighters, I don't know, is you do just literally walk the streets of this city and get into street fights. There is legitimate street fighting, which is like, I know it's not a thing back in the arcade days, right? Like it was just you pick a character and go. But in this, you are in a somewhat open world. It's limited in a lot of ways, but it is open world enough where when I was walking around and a guy just ran up to me and clocked me in the gut and suddenly we were in a match, I was like, whoa, what? And then they were like, you can fight anybody. And you look around and you realize every single NPC has like a level over them and the ability to walk up to them, and you can either talk or you can fight. It's like, what are we doing? You can literally, and within the story of the world, this is just what this community, what this population has just developed as a way to deal with like violent crime and stuff, and in the history of the game, like there used to be some just really bad shit in the city, and now things have gotten better, but they still all kind of keep this thing up. And then depending on how you talk to the masters, you kind of get this feeling of just like this is like a religion. This is like a philosophy that just the world exists on, right? And like like we have the golden rule of like don't do unto others, right? But in the world of Street Fighter, their golden rule is like respect the fight, right? And they're just like fight everyone because it's a respectful thing to do, and you're just like what? So and they let you do that. It's crazy.
The best moment of it, the moment that I like just is the epitome of what you're discussing, is when you talk to Chun-Li to like get her to become your teacher, your master, and
Right.
she's like, do you think that you have to be a big, bulky, burly man in order to be an effective fighter? Is that what strength is? And then you're given the two options of like, yeah, of course, or, well, no, not necessarily. And like, well, I'm going to say not necessarily to this woman whose thighs could literally pop my eyeballs out of my head, but also everything else that I've seen up to this point. And you like talk to Chun-Li maybe as the second mission in the world tour.
Oh, I
Like,
met her 20 minutes into my playing,
Yeah.
right? Like I had done the opening stuff with Luke and Bosch, and that was fun. But then like instantly you get a quest to go to Chinatown to go meet Chun-Li, and I was like, well, I'm doing that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, she's my second highest ranked master, behind the master himself, Ken Masters, which made my day when I found him.
Yeah, so Luke and Chun-Li are the only two masters I have right now, and just to finish that line of thought, Luke I have at level 6, I think, and Chun-Li I had her fighting style fit so like was so natural to me that I turned around and I was like level 10 with her without even like thinking. I just kept getting into fights with guys with boxes and TVs and shit on their heads, and I just yeah. But yeah, so Chun-Li was just she asks you this question, and you get these opportunities to have these kind of, they're not like this is not building some long like Mass Effect style like web narrative of depending on how you talk is depends on thing blah blah blah, but like you say to her like, no, I don't think that that's all that's required because you're living proof of that, right? And she basically is just like smart, and then she goes into this whole like philosophical breakdown of what strength means, right? And it's not the first time you've heard that, right? Luke has his own kind of bit on that shit in the opening.
Yeah. It's a very interesting world that they live in, but at the same time, it's sort of like, what if we made the purge all the time and made sure that people knew how to fight?
Yeah.
So that, like,
exactly.
if somebody attacks you, you can handle that. But also, like, you respect the rules. If someone's beaten, you walk away as the ruler. Have you met the Watcher yet?
Yes, I did. I ran up a ladder and found him on top of a building at one point.
His whole story of, like, imagine a man who first comes to Metro City and is attacked by thugs, and then a hero comes, beats up those thugs, but then takes the money of the thugs and says, that's my payment, that's my reward for saving you. And then so that the Watcher is this character who doesn't respect this system that literally everybody else has bought into in Metro City.
I got to the leader of the Roughnecks, the roughest, or the Rough Riders, the roughest rider, right?
Uh-huh.
And he is like, this is just another gang. Like there's all these roving gangs, and the Rough Riders is one of them. And their whole big thing is that they're actually really usually bigger guys, and they'll block. So you have to figure out how to break their block in order to defeat them. That's also something really cool. Each of the gangs have their own style that if you can kind of keep that in mind, and you might be attacked by multiple gangs at once. So you have to remember to like keep one guy kind of blocking in the background while you like hop over another dude to get behind him and stuff. It's really cool. Like the ways that it makes you think about how to combat like these different things. It really is like a puzzle game. But anyway, you get to the roughest rider guy, and you fight him, and you fight him because you need his leather jacket. And he's like, well, we'll see about that. And then you win, and then he gives it to you freely with like a smile on his face, and he's like, because if we didn't respect the rules, who would we be? And it's like, my dude, you're the leader of a roaming gang that beats people up in the streets. Like, yeah. And then I realized I don't know how to answer that question to you.
They'd be criminals. They'd be criminals because
the
the law of Metro City is that, like, the rules of Street Fighter, which is like the fight goes so long. Once somebody has no more energy, you don't continue.
Did did you clock when you first land in Metro City? They put you in what is obviously like a Times Square style
Beat Square,
area,
yeah.
right? Did you clock the ground underneath your feet?
um, no, I haven't looked it down yet.
There's the like this is really the world that they build is so kind of wild and has all this really fun stuff that you can find throughout it. You know, fun shop names and jokes like that, right? One of the best examples of that is when you first get into Metro City, where the cutscene ends. If you look down at your feet, there is a there is an embedded kind of Walk of Fame style texture in the ground that simply says "Our Way," and then it lists every fighting game slash kind of fight style game, like combat heavy game that they feel, I from what I could tell by this, like feeds into like their whole philosophy of how you fight. So it says like Street Fighter 1, Street Fighter 2, but then it also mentions like some really weird like offhand Final Fight. There's like Final Fight and Final Fight 2 and Final Fight Nights and stuff like are listed in it all the way up to Street Fighter 6. Take a look the next time you're in Metro City. Look at the ground because there's this like map, this road map of like games that they feel led to Street Fighter 6. And it's like just this silly like texture on the ground in the middle of this city.
Well, I mean, so the original Final Fight was meant to be a sequel to Street Fighter 2, and then it got developed into its own series, and then eventually characters from the Final Fight games start showing up in the Street Fighter games, and the main setting of Metro City is the main setting of Final Fight. So this really cool thing that has always kind of been there for Street Fighter has finally come to like full fruition with this game, which is really cool. Like Mad Gear is the enemies from the Final Fight series. And if you've had to get the leather, I imagine that means that you've met Thrasher. I don't
Which one's Thrasher?
He's a bunch of yellow with braids.
Yes, I did meet Thrasher. He's got with the fucking rad glasses, right?
Yeah.
Where he's yeah, no, and he's like up on like he's crouching on the top of the building like goddamn like Batman, and he's like, "Come up and see me, idiot." So you're like, well, okay,
Yeah.
But yes, no, I've met Thrasher. I thought you were gonna ask me about what's her nuts, where this game just also the other thing about that feels very Street Fighter in my limited experience with the games. They're just like, oh man, we need you to go pick up this buckle to finish putting this thing together. I guess you got to go to the Coliseum, and you're like it's like down the street, and the guy's like, here's a plane ticket, and you're like, where am I going? And I'm like, oh, is this gonna be a whole other part of this game? So then sure enough, you learn about how to do the world travel bits, right, where you have to like earn plane tickets to do this sort of shit. And then you go all the way to Italy to go to a Coliseum to fight somebody who gives you the item you need. And that's it. You turn right back around and come back to Metro City. That's all I did over there. And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, that's if I had a complaint about the game, and it's minor, is the fact that Metro City is the only real area to explore.
Yeah.
Because
that's true. No, I've got gripes with this game. There is some stuff that we should talk about that I don't necessarily love. Talking about the open world nature of Metro City, I got myself stuck in a real shit loop trying specifically to get through that particular mission where you're trying to collect these pieces to put an item together, right? Like without giving too much away. One of the moments, in order to get to the guy that you need to talk to really get that quest moving, you need to go down a series of alleys to get up, and the way that you get around the world, you learn these like master moves where you can like jump and spin kick to break stuff and all this other stuff, which allows you to then get around the city better. But minus all of that, I'm running down an alley and it opens up into like a street ball like area, right, where like a bunch of guys are doing TikTok dances and practicing like all sorts of silly like martial arts moves and all this fun stuff, right? Not that martial arts is silly, but in the world of Street Fighter, they do some silly ass shit with martial arts moves. And so you're running through this, right? And I came out of the alley, and the first time it happened, it was amazing. I came around this corner, didn't even see this person. Guy in a cardboard box just uppercuts me in the gut. Fight starts, right? But what had happened is the fights, which are often only like 10, 20 seconds with some of these street ones, because like they really are just lower level guys, and even if there's like 3 or 4 around, like that there's not too much nuance to them, right? The fight brought me back to the entrance of the alley as opposed to being finished and being through the alley. So I had to run back through it again, and the exact same thing happened. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, can I jump in a way that will make him miss me? Can I do the spin kick move and at least I can initiate the fight and maybe that will move it to a different spot or something? Like there was just all of this like all of this calculation that I'm trying to do, and I couldn't figure it out. I ended up fighting this guy. Well, not just this guy because he has friends with him. I ended up fighting this group of guys like 5 times. And finally, one of the fights happened in the other area instead of the entrance of the alley. I must have made it just a step further or something. And then when the fight ended, I was on the other side of the alley. That kind of sucked because that was like 10 minutes. And like I said, the fights are not that hard, so it started to get a little redundant. And I was like, this is a bitch. And then I was like, is there another way back there? I ran around, I couldn't find anything, and finally it worked. But like that was a pain in the ass, right? And then like just because we've mentioned or I mentioned that one of the big reasons I love this thing is the character creation stuff. The RE engine is not built, I think, for character customization. You can get some really weird fucked up stuff and that's fun, but the bigger problem is that my character on the customer creation scene suddenly didn't look great in the real world for a lot of reasons, and goddamn, they can't figure out how hair works.
I love my character. I love my character because they cannot figure out how hair works, and yet I was able to give my character close to realistic Devon Decker hair.
Yeah.
On
in
the
world
body
of Street Fighter, I feel like my character fits in, right? Like I think that the character creator does a phenomenal job of allowing you to create things like you said, even real people, because even I tried to do approximately what I look like, and I'm very happy with that. And they do give you the ability to jump back into the character creator for a price. So like I was able to go in and make a few tweaks and corrections after went to kind of readjust some stuff. But I mean the ways in which hair just look on Resident, and then I was thinking back to stuff like what we see in the Resident Evil games and on some characters, and the hair has never really been their thing.
True. Devil May Cry 5 also RE engine, and there's a lot of moments in that where like Dante is kind of known for his hair. And then you have the character V and his hair, and I'm like, yeah, so I'm not thrilled with the hair stuff that they have in the Reach for the Moon engine, but I was able to make it work. And then when I like looked at like the arm hair and how like it almost extends down over the knuckles. I mean, first of all, I have mid-digit hair, so I will admit that I'm a very hairy boy, since this is an audio medium,
right?
And you don't get to see me. It's lighter than like the hair on my head and my face, so I made it like lighter hair, and so it kind of like it looking wispy and like it being there is kind of good. But when it started out as like the darkest color available, I'm like, well, that just looks awful.
Yeah, no, and don't zoom in too close because it looks great. I mean, we're both a couple of hairy lads, right? And like me, a lot more of my like body hair in this regard. This is a weird place that Street Fighter has put us, but a lot of my body hair is really much more centralized, shall we say? My trunk is like is where it all decided to land, migrated from my head down to my chest, right? Like there is this idea that that like hair, the way that hair behaves on your chest shouldn't be the same way that hair behaves on your head, and like there's some weird ways in which it just looks like you have a wig on your chest. It's not gorgeous in that respect, but anything that they have created, and this speaks more to just what they're able to do once they're able to polish it, anything that they have created, this is one of the like best looking fighting games I have ever personally played. It looks amazing. Like the characters that they have created, the worlds that they have created, that sort of stuff looks awesome.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful looking game. I've poured at least 8 hours into it, which is even crazier when you consider that I didn't start until yesterday at about noontime, playing it proper. I am currently level 36, and I have just opened up chapter 8. Okay. I don't know if you want me to.
I'm only in 4 if I remember correctly. Yeah.
And it's not even like it wasn't even one of those things where I'm trying to mainline and clear the game, right? Like on some level, it's like I don't want to allow myself to be distracted too much because I want to make sure that I've experienced parts of the game to discuss it. But
Yeah.
there's been plenty of times where I'm like, it's only 500 more points to like I level up both my style and my character. I should do that before I go to the next fight.
Yeah, I should get into a couple of. No, I've done that a
Yeah.
few times too. My big thing was I want to build up some cash and some zenny and all of this shit because they've got three different currencies going right now. I want to build all of that stuff up because I want the full experience. I want to get a bunch of different silly costumes for my character and stuff like that. But the other side of the coin, I want to meet as many masters as I can because I've also just had a blast switching between the fighting styles and really figuring out what works for me. Because like I was loving doing just the basic stuff that you learn with Luke, and then you meet Chun-Li, and like I said, I click so much with her fighting style that I ended up without even like realizing it, just kind of blowing through because I was having so much fun getting into various little like bats with people. I also, when you meet Chun-Li, you also are given a pretty a pretty battle heavy mission to like get to a certain character up on a roof, and so you have to fight a bunch of guys. Like there's also story reasons why I think that happened as well, but like I didn't even clock it, like how much I was enjoying fighting with her. It didn't even like register that I was like spending that much time doing it. But yeah, I want to meet a bunch of the masters. So like my big thing is like I am going to kind of mainline this one a little bit as much as there is like side quests and stuff because I do want to meet more people, right? Like, I mean, part of it is I want to meet more people because I don't know this world. I know these characters though. I can't wait until I come across like E Honda somewhere, right? Like I'm excited.
Yeah. So I will say this, as someone's played it, most of the masters I've met has been through story progression, which is
Right.
something that I really enjoy. Like you can
Right.
make Marissa in the Coliseo one of your masters.
That's cool.
So, and that seems to be it. Is that any of the places that you wind up going, there tends to be a master in that like little stage that you get to be on.
Yeah, right. So that's why I do want to mainline it, despite the fact that I also kind of want to spend some time building. Like it's a good balance. Like it really is a well put together mode for this game. I just really I have no idea if this is a thing that's been in Street Fighter before. This whole mode of like roam free,
All
fight
new.
people on the street.
Because Street Fighter has not had a story mode ever, really. Like, to be completely honest about it, Street Fighter has been play the arcade mode and you get your character story through that. Through cutscenes at the end of the game, you learn more about your character. Street Fighter V came out after you had stellar things like Mortal Kombat 9 or Soul Calibur. I mean, Soul Calibur 6 has 2 story modes that you can play through.
Right.
So, like, people began to expect story modes, and a lot of that comes from what WB did. I mean, I might be giving them too much credit, WB and NetherRealm here, but DC versus Mortal Kombat, for me, was the first fighting game that had a really in-depth storyline, and then every game going forward from that built on it. The Injustice games have these deep storylines that force you to play as other characters and things like that. Interesting stuff. So then by the time Street Fighter V comes out, I mean, Street Fighter V historically was a swing and a miss in terms of what you got on day one when you bought that game.
Right. Yeah.
And later they added the story mode to it. And even right now, as somebody who played through that story mode, I couldn't tell you anything about what happens in it.
It wasn't their focus, right? Like it was very clear about at the time of Street Fighter V that story mode was just they were going to be the ones that weren't going to focus on that, and they kind of wore that as like a weird like stamp of honor, like we're the ones you come to just get to the fight, and it's like okay, and then that hand didn't play too well, so they were just like we do have a story mode, we didn't bother getting it polished for release because we didn't think you'd care.
Yeah.
And then they finally put it out, and by that point, people had either moved on or they were already hating on the game so hard that when a story mode came out, it just had no chance, right?
Yeah. I mean, because Street Fighter 4, I never bought. I was still working at Hollywood Video, so I was able to rent it and beat it in a weekend enough to the point where I felt good. And then, second shout out, Mark, when they released Ultra Street Fighter 4, he's like, so this is now obsolete. Do you want my copy of Street Fighter 4? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine, because I just want to be able to sometimes play some Street Fighter 4. So free Street Fighter 4, thank you.
So stylistically, is 4 the one where they get real into like the cell shading, like comic booky nature of
It's
it? One of
pencily
them had
graphics, yeah.
yeah. That's what it was. Yeah. Because that's the other thing is that the style of this game. I mean, I've already gushed over how they the stuff that they build looks so good, and part of that is because there is a definitive style to this game that is ridiculously fun. The size of Luke's arms in the opening cutscenes are some of the goofiest shit ever. Or the first character that you meet, who's actually the leader of the battle hub. Oh, what's their name? It's gonna kill me,
Eternity.
but I
Oh,
can't.
yeah,
Yeah,
Eternity.
no, Eternity, right? Yeah, they're like that look for that character for the big host of the like the battle network for them is just a fucking blast. Have you been to the battle hub to yet?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah,
also
and you
Eternity
meet them
does
again
show
when
up
you
in the
go.
story mode too. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's fantastic. But like they show back up in the battle hub and these characters. I love these characters. Oh, who's the e-girl that you run into there?
Which one? Lee Fen or Alice? Because they're
Lieutenant's
both
fine, but I'm
technically
talking about Alice.
e-girls.
Yeah, I'm talking about Alice. Alice is the one that you meet doing Luke's stuff and like right away. She's like
Yeah.
the second kind of big character that you meet. She teaches you how to fight out on the streets, right? And like Alice is super fun with like the like weird baggy like pants, but they only seem to be baggy like past the knee. Otherwise, they get kind of like it's this really weird like there's all sorts of silly styles and shapes and clothes behave in ways they shouldn't. Hairs like you feel like you're playing an anime. Like you really do feel like you're running around in an anime world and playing an anime fighting game. Like it is a blast, as opposed to something like a Mortal Kombat, which also I think looks fucking amazing, but their whole thing is grounded in this gory realism that is just, can be a little mopey, shall we say, compared to like the brightness and the fun of this game.
Yeah, it is. It is a blast. Street Fighter 6 is a blast. But then, so Street Fighter 4 was a weird return to form because after trying to invent and invest people in a bunch of new characters with Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 4 comes and basically it's the old cast with like 4 new people.
Right.
So then 5 comes along, and 5 was basically Capcom at their DLC worst. Like, but in a weird way, thank God for that, because Capcom really ate shit on Street Fighter 5. So then we got things like Mercenaries as a free download with Resident Evil 4 this year.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Or all these other games that were like complete packages, because the other big thing that Capcom did is it was in one of the Street Fighter X Tekken games. I'm not sure which one, because there's one that's in the Street Fighter 2D style that has Street Fighter characters fighting Tekken characters, and then there's the one that's in the Tekken style.
Yeah, right. They made two different. I forgot they made two different versions of that game, and each house had their play on it.
Had their style of game in it, and so that's just a thing that happened with that. But that was one of the times where people data mined the disc and found that everything that they had talked about will be coming eventually was already there. So people were not happy with Capcom after that experience.
Right. It was on the disc, but it wasn't unlocked, right? So when they were talking about how they were going to work on stuff and add it later, there wasn't anything to work on. It was there. Now, there's always patches and all that sort of shit too. But the idea being that like you sold us this thing and then you just kind of gated it with waiting for more money. I think we even talked about this at the time. We must have talked about this.
I don't think we were recording the show, but we've talked about it with other games. I think specifically Capcom, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which is something that has happened in the time that we're doing the show.
Did Dragon's Dogma, right? Which wasn't that the one where the ending was on the disc?
No, that's Asura's Wrath. We've talked about Asura's Wrath 100 times.
Is that Capcom?
That is Capcom as well, yeah.
Yeah, where like there's that game infamously didn't have an ending, and like after like, and it was like pretty well beloved otherwise. Like people adore that game, but then there was no ending to the game. Turns out they were going to sell it as DLC, and worse than that, it did have an ending on the disc. You just had to pay them to unlock it, which is like the grossest business model ever. And they didn't get far away from this. Like, they were still doing kind of shit like this all the way through, like, Resident Evil 7. Like, I remember, like, there's some of my favorite bits of Resident Evil 7 are parts of the DLC aspects to it. Like, there's more to do with the brother and his whole, like, Saw-esque bullshit. You have a whole Chris storyline that is DLC. So, like, all the way up through Resident Evil 7, they were still doing some weird shit with DLC.
Yeah, I mean, RE2 was sort of my return to buying Capcom games on day one. And that was because I rented it from Redbox, loved it, and was like, I need to own this game because I know
I'm never returning it.
Yeah.
So now I guess I purchased it.
No, I was able to because it wasn't available on day one through Redbox. It was like a week later that Redbox got it, which, like, I mourned the loss of Redbox renting video games because of how many games it eventually got me to buy. It's that same argument that we always have about piracy, is that, like, if I'm pirating something, chances are it's just because I can't buy it yet. Right? It's so I miss being able to go to Redbox, lay down $7 to have a game for 3 days, and then usually I'd end up buying the game. I think every game that I rented from Redbox, I then would go on to own. And Resident Evil 2 worked out because it got like a drop in price to $40.
Yeah, right, it did.
And that's when I grabbed it. Because I'm like, I have more that I want to do with this game. I want to play this game multiple times, but I'm going to wait until it's affordable. And it was within a week of me completing it that I did that. Sorry. So, like, that's where I came back. And since Resident Evil 2, the remake, came out, I can't think of a Capcom game that played the type of dirty pool that Capcom was guilty of in the 2010s.
Yeah, in the earlier titles, for sure. Well, yeah, no, because like you said, they got reamed. I mean, like, people really just did. And because of that, we have these games now that have these better experiences, which is, like, good that they seem to have turned it around. I there is still going to be some added character stuff with this. I'm curious to see how that gets handled. There's all of this weirdness nowadays that I have not kind of run into yet with Street Fighter, but I do think that some people in the community kind of are viewing some of the currency stuff as kind of a little loot boxy and more to the point that, like, pay to win and stuff. And I like I said, I have not run into a need to dive into any of that aspect of it. And a lot of that is because I'm not playing against people online. And I mean, like, I'd be stupid to ignore the fact that is the thing people want to do with a Street Fighter, right? Is they want to they want to be online with their friends and people all over the world and challenging people and all that.
Yeah. So the first thing that I did was go into the battle hub, and as a level 1 person, I'm like, I want to do an avatar battle, and I got challenged by somebody who was level 90. So he has 3 bars of life. I have a quarter of a bar of life.
Right.
And that first fight, I'm just like, oh, he's gonna kick my ass, like, what, regardless. But then, like, not kind of like Maverick, the cowboy, not the pilot. After watching that first fight, I had noticed some, let's say, weak points in his fighting style. And when he requested a rematch, I'm like, I will request a rematch with this guy, right? I know I'm not going to win, but I'm not going to look like the babe lost in the woods I did that first time.
Yeah, right. You're not
and
your ass beat as bad.
I cleared one of his life bars. And afterwards, he messaged me and he's like, yeah, you should consider yourself a hell of a fighter for being able to do that.
Wait, man, you're lucky he didn't think you were like a hustler. He probably did in the moment until he kicked your ass. He probably was like, this motherfucker just got me.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, thank you. I literally just warmed up the game. I was still on modern controls because that is a problem that I have with this game. If I'm gonna have my complaints about this game, one is there are 3 separate places you need to set your control style, and then what's worse is in World Tour, even if you set it to classic, for the first, like, 6 missions, you are still locked into modern mode. And
Yeah,
that's fine.
they tell you that even. They're just like, you need to play the modern style for a bit, but you can eventually turn to classic. And you cannot turn on. I'm trying to think of where it is. Is it maybe it was in the Battle Hub? There's one of the three because there's three different styles of controls. Dynamic, which is like what dynamic seems to be to me is dynamic is you don't play Street Fighter, but you love the silliness of it. Just turn dynamic on because shit's going to get crazy is essentially what dynamic is. We will take care of the rest. You just press the buttons you want to press. I don't want to call it just like button mash mode because like there is still some finesse to it. This idea that you need to remember that if you're doing a hard hit or not, right? Like that kind of thing. But in that regard, you don't have to worry about the up, down, down, that kind of stuff.
The memorization. That's been the really interesting thing about this game is that shouldn't it just be your reaction speed in this game? Why do you then also have to have some elaborate code memorized? And it's like, well, I mean, I get it. I get why people who haven't played fighting games, that might be your approach to it. But also, like, that's part of the fun and finesse of these games when they were in the arcade, where, like, right. You didn't own the game. So, like, your chance to learn the game was on every quarter. And it's very
and from the people around you. Like I actually I literally wrote about this in like my folklore studies that I was doing in college is like the ways in which like this information was passed down from player to player, and sometimes it wasn't true. Sometimes it was bullshit about like if you press this way and go that way, then Chun-Li's clothes blow off, and it's just like what like there's all sorts of weird shit that kids would tell each other in arcades. But that was, as you're saying, that was part of the whole like oeuvre of these games. And I will say that the combination concept, the combination fighting game concept, is one of the big things that does is it takes it out of the realm of the game and puts it on the player. The responsibility, the fun, the ability, the talent, whatever you want to call it. Like it is something that is then solely on the hands of the player, literally the hands of the player, to learn to do, to memorize, to figure out the best times to do that stuff. Like the ways in which it connects you as a player to what's actually happening in this fighting game, it cannot be beat. Like turning on dynamic mode immediately disconnected me from so much stuff. But it was fun to see, right? And as somebody that's not a big fighting game guy, it didn't hurt my heart or anything like that to do it, but it did immediately make me kind of feel like I was just watching somebody else play sometimes.
So I need to offer an apology to somebody who sent me a message this morning. Is my friend Eric, because he sent to me. This is how we opened up today's conversation, because he's over in Asia. He lives in Asia right now. Is it just me, or are most modern games more of an interactive movie than games talking? Like AAA, not saying it's a bad thing, it's just an observation on my point. And I'm like, I haven't really played any games like that recently, so I don't really have an opinion on it. But then you talk about dynamic mode, and that is literally kind of, you press a button and a full combo goes off.
Yeah,
like it is,
and like from to Eric's like good point. Like I think that there are a lot of more games available to people that aren't interested in getting into crazier stuff. And that's okay. I mean, like the idea that the controls are simple, and sometimes now simple means half of the things happen for you, right? I like the way that Street Fighter handles it, though, to be clear. This idea that you can switch out of that mode, and there are certain areas of the game where that mode just isn't allowed. Like I like that. Like I think having that, to me, it's an accessibility option, right?
Yeah, I'm certainly not upset about it in its existence. In practice, do I sometimes, when I go to do an avatar battle in the Battle Hub, and it's somebody who has a 12 win streak, and they're using modern controls, do I feel like, well, I wish I could just switch to modern controls so we were on the same playing field? Because I'm using classic controls. I'm using classic controls on a gamepad. So, like, first of all, the other reason I'm mad at you is that if I do end up buying this game, Sejohn, I'm gonna need a fight stick. And I haven't bought a fight stick since Mortal Kombat 9, where they had the set that came with a recreation of the original Mortal Kombat like layout on an arcade stick. And the reason for that is that it's very unique, the Mortal Kombat one, where it's the 2 punches, the 2 kicks, and then the block in the middle.
Right, right.
So like it's this weird sort of X. I have an X on my desk that I just ran my fingers over to really just solidify that for me. It's this weird X setup, and people were complaining that, you know, playing Mortal Kombat on a modern, you know, fight stick, you don't get that Mortal Kombat feeling anymore. And that's because they're not making cabinets anymore. Right? And if they are going to cabinets, they're usually being put on one of those universal cabinets that can have any sort of board loaded into it. So it's all going to be based on the Street Fighter layout of the 3 kicks, 3 punches.
There is a, maybe I might be misremembering. Somebody out there's probably chew me out for this because they're better at the arcade stuff than I am. But there's a barcade in the city that I go to from time to time, and they do have a Mortal Kombat 10 setup, and it looks like it's an arcade cabinet and all of this stuff, but then coming off of it are just a couple of PlayStation controllers.
Yeah, and that's cool. DIY setups like that. There's been some great technology advances in monitors.
It feels it feels like it is not that the barcade put it together, but rather somebody out there probably puts these together, and then places can go and buy them. Right. Like
exactly.
So it's not just like because they also have, every good barcade should have this. They also have like the living room setup off to the side where you can like sit around a bunch of couches and just play like Smash on like a TV that is literally just coming off of like an N64. So there is also that. This feels like it's a step above that. It doesn't feel like it's just some guy at the bar knew how to do this. It feels like they did get this. They did purchase this. This is something available out there. And I think it is Mortal Kombat 10. Somebody out there is probably just like, no, it's like Final Fight or some shit. But yeah, there is some box that I'm thinking of right now that it is just a PlayStation controller, and you know, it's got like the heavy duty like plastic thing keeping it connected. Like there's no way you're gonna like be able to run off with it or anything like that. It probably doesn't even have like actual Bluetooth in it. It probably is all hardwired right into it, right?
Yeah. I mean, while we're talking about barcades, my favorite setup is when they have the RetroPies or emulation stations set up at the actual bar. So if you're sitting at the bar and then the TV that would usually have like the Matrix or Sports Center on it is the game, and you're playing at the bar, so other people can be entertained by what you're doing, or like while you're getting a drink, you can be just like dicking around on Mario. Like that, one of my best nights, I've talked about it before on the show, but like doing a Link to the Past run sitting at a bar was one of the funnest experiences I've ever had. Nice. And like, it was a good time. And then of course by the end people were buying me drinks because like, look at what you're doing.
All right, Dev, as we are on a timer today and I am staring down the barrel of us hitting 40 minutes left, is there something else we needed to talk about today? I forget any promises we made.
Well, our big promise was for Tears of the Kingdom next week. So, I mean, we could keep doing... Street Fighter's the only thing that I kind of am prepared to talk about. I know that we're both prepared to talk about. Because some other stuff happened that I think we can address. Do you want to take, like, 10 minutes to just wrap up our Street Fighter stuff? And then, like, we have 30 minutes on the extra miscellaneous topics?
Yes, for sure, because some announcements came out movie-wise this week, not about movies themselves, well, not about any movies coming down the pike, but some stuff that's been out there that we should probably put we
should definitely address those things, which I think will dovetail very nicely into the other thing that happened on HBO Max and Adult Swim this week that I'd like to discuss. And
so then, like, I will say that as far as Street Fighter goes, the last thing I will say is that I am having a hell of a time with this game. I am not a Street Fighter guy. This game is not, I think, it has not yet, maybe it will, has not turned me into a Street Fighter guy. And so to that point, I don't know how much more I'm gonna get through the story stuff because that's super fun. And like I said, I want to meet the masters and I want to learn all that. But the fact that I am not doing the online aspect of it, the fact that I am not seeking out that strength that they want me to streak, like, right? I don't know how long the legs are going to be on Street Fighter 6 for me. So I'm super happy that I did just get the base game. I'm glad I didn't like buy in on some bigger version, and I go past me for recognizing that this was probably what was going to happen. I'm going to play this game for a bit. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. I'll be able to talk to people about Street Fighter for a while, and that'll be super cool. But yeah, I do. This is not like when Mortal Kombat 9 when they did their whole reboot, and I liked Mortal Kombat, but man, that whole trilogy that they did fucking made me a Mortal Kombat guy. I love those games.
So, slant review that we're going to be playing Mortal Kombat 1 probably on this show.
Oh, that's true. I completely forgot about the reveal of that, and that looks freaking baller. I'm so excited about that.
The only reason that I'm like able to say that is because saw the reveal, was excited, but then the Lin Kuei trailer that they dropped this week that highlighted Sub-Zero and Scorpion and Smoke and Rain and Frost. Her name is Frost from Mortal Kombat 11 is coming back, and she's not going to be cybernetic this time because that timeline hasn't happened.
Exactly, because of the reset of the universe. Yeah.
But also Cyrax and Sector are there as cyborgs. So like that Lin Kuei is still fucking with their members. Like I'm really on board for what Mortal Kombat 1 looks like, especially after what they did with the Mortal Kombat 9 reset of everything.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's going to be probably the next fighting game we talk about. I mean, I know that I want to play Tekken 8 so fucking bad, which was the biggest reason why I didn't want to get into Street Fighter 6 was Tekken 8 is supposed to be coming this year. And I know that when Tekken 8 comes out, I'm going to lock myself with my controller and get the Platinum Trophy that weekend. That's what I did with Tekken 7, and it is just one of the greatest experiences I've ever had.
Tekken games are so far beyond me. I suck at Tekken. More like Street Fighter, I was never a big fan. I was never a big I wasn't in the world of Street Fighter. So every time I pick up Street Fighter, I feel like I have to relearn how to do Street Fighter. But after a while, I get it. Mortal Kombat, kind of the same way, except since 9, I actually feel super comfortable playing Mortal Kombat games now. I have never in my life felt comfortable playing Tekken. I think Tekken looks cool. Yoshimitsu is like haunts my dreams. Like,
well, he's also in Soul Calibur, so you kind of get the best of both worlds there, like Hannah Montana.
But at least there, Link is there to protect me.
Hey, well, he's also like a very early build of Yoshimitsu because it's the past.
Right.
It's not the hyper cybernetic version that he is.
The fucking Tekken is like watching a foreign film when you grew up on like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, and then somebody goes like, this is what they're doing in Japan, which is nuts because they play all of these games. But like that is what Tekken always was to me, is like Tekken feels like it is removed from me, not just from like talent, but also like culturally.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, if you weren't playing the 3D fighters when they were new, if you weren't doing Virtua Fighter when it dropped, if you never touched Tekken when like it was the king of the arcade or had it on your PlayStation, like after Tekken 3, that game took off like a rocket ship to try to make it its own thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've played them all, from Tekken 1 through to Tekken 7. And it is something that, like, right now I couldn't tell you anything, but as soon as I am in control of a character, I'm gone. Like, I am so, like, mind link drifting with Tekken that, like, there's a reason why I will give this game a week of my time. And then I have to put it down. Because I can't give it the 100% that like the professional Tekken players do, but I know that I'm giving it like just a little bit more than I should be anyway, if that makes sense.
No, totally.
Yeah. So on Street Fighter 6, I'm probably going to hold out for a price drop. I don't know if or when that's ever going to happen, but it's something that I do want to own after my time with it, but also it's one of those ones that playing on a gamepad, like there's no reason not to use modern controls because they're built to be played on a gamepad. Right. Like there's the drive impact, like reversal, which is to press forward and hit both of the heavy buttons at the same time. And because one of them is like a press shoulder button and the other one is a trigger, it is almost impossible to pull that off on the gamepad. Because, like, your timing has to be separated and different. Like you need to almost be pulling the trigger before you even activate it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not built for that. It's built for a fight pad, a fight stick, and I've been wanting one anyway. And this is the game that's like, well, it kind of justifies it, Dev. Yeah, you probably should do it. And
if this were 3 years ago, this would be ripe for a PS Plus drop at the end of the year. Like I would have put money if this was 2020, I would have put money that Street Fighter 6 would be a PS Plus. The base game would be a PS Plus drop in like November of this year, because by that point they want you to then for the holiday pick up all the extra shit, right? Unfortunately, the nature of PS Plus over the last we've not really talked much about it, but the nature of PS Plus over the last few years has really kind of waned. It's not been the constant cycle of hits that it used to be. A couple of good ones here or there. I think I just picked up Alan Wake, which is fucking rad. I'm super excited to play Alan Wake again, especially after Control and the ways in which Control subtly hints at being connected to Alan and all that stuff is rad.
Right.
So like,
and with the sequel finally coming sometime later this year, like
so,
you're
yeah,
right to play it.
Well, I always people say the sequel, and I think of the Carnival sequel, the like mini sequel that they put out that I think was probably just DLC for the first one, right? But then on PC you can actually buy them as two separate things. Alan Wake had like a really weird like pseudo sequel somewhere in there. But yeah, there is like a sequel proper coming soon.
Yeah, Alan Wake 2. So I guess the last thing I want to say on Street Fighter 6, and then we'll move on to the other things that we do need to touch on, is I have a real problem. I can't tell if it's a part of the game or if it is a bug with the current build of the game. I can't have two quarter circle forward moves on my character. And that would make sense if I'm trying to do a Hadouken, which is quarter circle punch, and something that is quarter circle kick. Like, if it were two things that required a punch at the end, of course, my character can only do one move there. But I want to use a Hadouken and something that's quarter circle forward kick. I should be able to have both of those on my built character.
That gets weird because like I couldn't tell you. It might be because it might be because of something like other control schemes.
It might be because of modern. 100% it might be because of modern. Like, but it's something that bums me out because I was on the hunt for Ryu, right? I wanted to find Ryu so that I could learn a fireball, a basic quarter circle forward punch fireball. So when I got Chun-Li, I switched to her tactic like immediately because I wanted the lightning kick. The lightning kick is such a big part of my character build that even now as I am studying under Ken, like I still have the lightning kick as a move. And stumbling upon Ken, and Ken was kind of a hidden master. I had to do a bunch of things in the game that were like side quests to make it happen, which was exciting. That like, yeah, there are at least two masters that I have unlocked because of doing side quests. So things to keep in mind.
There's every location has a master's list, and they even tell you whether or not you need to be in a day. There's a day or night cycle in this game, which is also wild. It also tells you what time of day you can meet them. And like Chun-Li is only out during the day, for instance. Luke is only available during the day, but there's two that I have not found yet that apparently are only available at night in Metro City.
I have not found them yet either. I will say that too. Everybody will only talk to me in the day, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, so it is one of those situations where I was studying with Chun-Li, I got her to level 13, and then I found Ken, and I'm like, all right, so I'm going to keep doing Ken until I unlock a basic fireball, and then I'm going to switch back to Chun-Li, have my kick, have my fireball, and I'll have the character that I kind of want to have. And it wouldn't allow me because it's both the quarter circle forward motion. So I don't know the full reasoning behind it, but it's a weird limitation that I'm a little disappointed in. But now I'm like, well, now that I'm level 16 at Ken, and spoilers, I don't want to ruin anything for everybody, the highest level you can get with any master, in terms of levels, not your bond with them, is 20. So I'm like, well, now that I'm 4 levels away from like mastering Ken, I'm going to finish that out.
I wonder if they let you max master with everybody, or if
Well,
you
by all accounts, once you master with somebody, you are rewarded with assignable experience, so you can assign it to other masters. Which I think is friggin' awesome. I have not seen that yet. I am just reporting what may be folklore from the arcade floor, but it is one of those situations where that would be awesome. That would be an awesome thing where, like, what would the incentive be to continue using Ken's style once I master it? And I was like, well, you're going to get experience crystals that you can apply to anyone else.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So I enjoy it. I'm going to wait, and I'm mostly going to wait because I'm probably going to put down like $300 with a fight stick and the game itself eventually.
Rad.
So,
yeah, well, definitely have to check in about that.
All right,
Dev.
I'm setting my dial of destiny to disappointing. Because as much as you want to talk about the thing that we have already talked about, and it's a very important thing to talk about, the fact that I still haven't found anybody to talk about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny with.
Well, and now we know why.
Yeah, it is a bomb. It is a box office failure. To the fact that, like, they were grasping at straws to send more friendship love to over in the UK, that it had a $9 million opening in the UK. Like, it's not a complete failure. Look at how many people saw it in the UK. And then, like, when everybody kind of saw through that, they're like, you know, this $300 million movie reported budget has made a sixth of that back in its opening weekend. And we're done. Like, Disney has had one profitable movie this year, Sejohn. One. And is Guardians of the Galaxy, available now to purchase digitally.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, you know, and the thing is with this one, I couldn't tell you what it is. I have not heard anybody complain about this movie. I've not heard anybody say they don't want to see it. A lot of people I've talked to are excited for it. They just, like, we talked last week about where I was with this movie, and it feels like that's where everybody kind of landed with Indiana Jones. It's like, it's not that I don't want to see it. I'm just waiting to just watch it, you know, in a more comfortable experience of my own making. You know, like, I think that Disney, more than anybody, we have really seen it shake out for Disney, that the at-home experience of COVID really fucked their whole theater experience coming back. So many people are just waiting. I mean, the same thing happened with Elemental, right? Like, I don't know anybody that saw that movie and, like, bashed it. I know a lot of people that want to see that movie, but they're like, yeah, but I'm not. Why am I going to take my kids to a theater to go and see this movie? It's going to be on D Plus in a couple of months, and then we'll just watch it at home, and it'll be fine. And I will still get the movie, and I will still probably enjoy myself. But, like, I don't need to go and see it in the theater. And that whole attitude, I'm excited to see this movie, but not enough to go and see it in a theater, seems to just be persisting with Disney's whole thing this year. And, you know, it's not just Disney. Other movies are also feeling that same crunch. I mean, I would argue that there's a lot of that kind of same theater experience fatigue going on with the WB stuff, because a lot of what's been going on over there, in regards to the fact that they can't seem to get a damn video game movie, superhero movie off the ground anymore, is like, I think a lot of that can be equated to the fact that people are just willing to wait to see them. You know, nobody is making a movie that is driving people to want to see it in theaters. Every now and then one pops up, right? We have examples of that. I mean, look at Maverick, right? Like, even Avatar. Disney has to be counting Avatar as their successful film, right?
But it's from last year.
Way of Water is last year.
Way of Water was 2022. It's December 2022. That movie came out, Edie Falco, but it came out 4 years after you did your scenes. That's not part of their 2023. Their only one is Guardians of the Galaxy, like I said. And then since you brought up Elemental, which is the biggest issue with Elemental, is the Pixar problem of all of the Pixar movies became day one releases on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So
when they didn't do that, it really screwed that movie up.
Yeah. They're like, well, you know, like, but also it's eventually going to come to the Disney Plus. Like they taught people that lesson. And then to go a step further with WB, because here's the thing that I forgot, is that HBO Max, really the WB's, entrant into the streaming wars, was every movie is going to be same day HBO Max theatrical experience. Now that did not fuck everything up for them. That they still made money on movies like Dune, where people went out to see it in theaters while I sat and watched it at home the day that it came out. They still made money on The Matrix 4. I don't remember the title of it. Is it the rebooted?
Revelations or something?
Revelations is the third one.
Remixed,
It's
rehashed.
something. But yeah, whatever the fourth Matrix was, they still made theatrical money off of that. But then, where my mind jumps to is Wonder Woman 84, which was their first time that they did that, and they made it this big event on Christmas, and then Wonder Woman 84 is garbage. And I don't say that lightly about movies, but Wonder Woman 84, as perhaps the only person in the world who has seen it multiple times, start to finish, like paying attention to the movie, is not a good movie. Like they did not know what to do with the Wonder Woman sequel, and it shows. And the other one that comes out, same sort of comic book thing, is The Suicide Squad. Now, a lot of people like The Suicide Squad, but the basic theater goer, the person who is like only kind of invested in the comic book cinema, were not fans of The Suicide Squad.
Well, they didn't know what they were getting into, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, there already was a suicide. Yeah, like, they've completely muddied the waters on that one. And then people showed up, and first of all, half of the people they advertised being in that movie die in the first 10 minutes, which is, like, a fun joke, but really not a great way to market your film.
Yeah, no, it's, it'd be like if when I go see Expendables, Sylvester Stallone died in the first scene, I would be pissed. I would see how he's going to come back in the third act. I wouldn't leave. But, like, people were not happy with the Suicide Squad movie. That's just the fact of it. And there you go. So the two movies that came out that I could have gone to the theater for or I could just watch at home were real, like, swings and misses.
Yeah.
So when you're then faced with the other DCEU films that have come out since the Suicide Squad... but why would I go? Why would I risk it the way that I did it for other stuff?
We famously have talked on this show about how the only reason we went to go see Black Adam in theaters is because by luck of the draw, we happened to be in the same city at the same time. So we were just like, well, shit, we should do something. And it did. And it, like, I think we've made this clear. It wasn't a guarantee that it was going to be Black Adam. It was just, well, this is the most say report thing for us to do.
Yeah,
right?
It was one of those things where
the most, like, yeah.
The type of conversations that we've been having about The Flash, right? And we're going to touch on The Flash now that I've evoked the name. Were the types of conversations we were having about Black Adam. Was like, wow, people are like kind of talking about it. Some people are upset, but some people are saying that it's worth it. Like, it was one of those situations. So then when we're out drinking at the bar and we look at the movies that we could go see after the bar closes, because, it was still a weird time where bars were closing at like 9 o'clock. Black Adam was the one that made the most sense.
Yeah.
And so we saw it and we had a blast with it. Honestly, before we talk about The Flash, I 1,000% co-sign the idea that Black Adam is the best DCEU film that has come out post whatever they've been saying. Like, it's certainly the best one that's come out in the past, like, not calendar year, but like 12 months.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no, I mean, I don't know what line people, because the thing about the DC movies is people are always drawing weird lines about what the last time they saw a good one. Some people claim Black Adam, some people will claim that Shazam! Fury of the Gods was actually good and nobody went to go see it and that was our mistake. I have a hard time believing it, but as somebody that didn't see it, I guess I can't really say.
I could watch it at home and I still don't want to.
Right, exactly.
I mean, go listen to our Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe new episode on Murder Mystery 2. While that's supposed to be focused on the Adam Sandler stuff, the inclusion of Mark Strong, we got to share some DC feelings
Yeah, yeah.
about the Shazam films.
And like, there's, I like, to be blunt, they burned me with Batgirl. Batgirl would have been the movie that I would have been like, I need to go see this DC superhero movie in theaters. This is the one. And that just didn't happen. And so, like, congratulations, guys. I really wasn't interested in anything else. You canceled the one thing I cared about going to see in theaters.
Not only was it the one thing that I cared about, it was never like earmarked for a theatrical release, but you better believe I would have watched it day one. The same way that I watched.
It was also supposed to just be a Max release.
Yeah.
Right?
Like the same way that I watched Murder Mystery 2, just to be a fucking asshole about it, on the day that it released on Netflix in March of this year, it would have been the same thing when Batgirl came out. Because that is the level of engagement that I had with that film.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was this weird thing where they're like, well, if we get rid of it, then we'll get the tax break, which now brings us to the discussion of The Flash and it being the largest financial failure in comic book movie history.
And we actually, in that conversation, have a little bit more clarification than we've ever had when people have said shit like that, because they've pretty much openly admitted to close to $150, I think, for marketing, which is like a number we never get. Right? Like we never get the marketing numbers. And it's something that we talk about when we say, well, this movie was considered a failure, but it did really well in the theater. But then we always say, but we don't know what they spent on marketing, right? This time, like there are straight up like reported numbers out there. And the consensus seems to be that it is in the realm of $150 million spent on marketing that movie on top of the budget to actually make it. And so with all of that information, people can pretty confidently say that it is the biggest superhero flop of all time.
Well, and the only thing that it surpassed was Shazam! Fury of the Gods. That's what the number 2 highest like loss leader in comic book films are.
The only reason that Shazam didn't lose more money is that Shazam didn't have that marketing budget supposedly.
Right. But the numbers that are being thrown around is that The Flash 2023 lost around $200 million to Shazam 2's $150 million.
Right.
Like, which is just, ugh. But that whole list, Phil, while I get this up.
There's a list. I imagine you're talking about the list that's going around about the top 10 biggest comic book movie failures of all time, essentially, and the fact that like 6 out of the 10 are DC, not even Warner Brothers movies, DC EU movies, right? Like specifically in this run of films that they've been trying for the last 10 years, is a pretty big kick in the nuts for what they've been doing. I will say that some of the critiques that have been coming out are there's a lot of people that are just like, man, I really hoped when Gunn took the reins that we wouldn't be seeing shit like this anymore. This has nothing like we have yet to see a movie under that whole like that whole world shift, right? Like this is still stuff from the old days, and the next 2 movies I think still will be too, right? Blue Beetle and what's
Aquaman
the other one that's coming
2.
out?
This
time,
right,
Aquaman 2. I keep forgetting I keep forgetting that Aquaman 2 has not already been out.
Well, you can be forgiven for that. It was one of those ones that was shit canned because remember where WB was last year, where right now we can only afford to release 2 more movies without going bankrupt. And one of the choices was Black Adam, and the other one was the Florence Pugh movie that I feel like an asshole, but neither one of us has taken the time to actually learn the title of that movie.
No, the problem is we try to learn the title of it, and then we instantly forget it because it's one of the most forgettable movie titles ever. It's like Not Without You or The One I Love or some weird phrase that would honestly probably be on a fake movie poster in any other movie.
Yeah, it's... I'm going to look it up right now. I'm already looking up that list that came out with The Flash. So I will look up Florence. I will get the name of that movie, and we will say it for the first time ever on the show.
And we have also talked at length a lot about with The Flash that there was also a lot of baggage coming along with it because of everything going on with Ezra Miller. And like, I don't know if that really led to a lot because we are creatures of the internet. Like Devon and I very much live in that realm. And if you were a creature of the internet looking at this movie, The Flash, beforehand, there was definitely that person in the room that would say, I don't know if I'm going to see that movie. Ezra Miller and their whole like issues being on display for everybody right now and the ways in which they've been hurting people, like I'm not on board for supporting that. There would always just be a cacophony of people that would just be like, oh, you have to separate that stuff and they're getting better, and some of that stuff is overblown, all these reasons why that shouldn't be the reason to not see this movie. And so I kind of felt like, yeah, that's not going to be enough to stop people from seeing this movie. Now, staring down like the truth of it and seeing like, oh, nobody saw this movie, I wonder. You have to wonder how much of that is because of what happened, or some of the various things that happened. I think it's more than that though, and I think that's the important thing to remember, is that like it's not fair both to Ezra Miller, who's clearly going through shit and they need to seek help, are getting help, whatever is happening there, like that definitely should be acknowledged. But to lay the entire failure of this film on just them and their issues, not you can't do that. There's so much other shit going on here. People are just not interested right now in these movies, or if they are interested, they're not interested enough to go and see them in theaters. And I think that to bring it back to the Indiana Jones stuff and all of that, like, I just think that's what we're seeing. There's going to be one or two movies every year that people are going to make the effort to go and see, because like Spider-Verse is doing okay right now, right? Still not doing as well as I think they wanted that one to do, but
the
good
budget
enough.
on that movie was friggin' astronomical. The amount of money that they put into that film means that even with everything that it's doing, I think it's barely broken even.
Right, exactly. And that's, and that sucks, but also like, we have to, maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the time where we as a movie going people like kind of just accept that financial success of a film does not dictate whether or not we will enjoy a film, right? And then from that, movie studios need to figure out a way to be okay with the fact that not every movie is going to make $1 billion. This is not new on the Say Report, this conversation, but that idea that nowadays, if a movie doesn't make $1 billion, it's a failure. It is so in the water that like it is what's really killing this conversation right now. Because a lot of these movies, as much as they are financial flops, as much as they are costing everybody all of this money, at the end of the day, there's also a lot of people out there that are still going out and seeing these movies and enjoying them. Right? I mean, like Spider-Verse is, I've not heard a bad thing about that movie, but you're right. It's financially still not doing great, but like they kind of set themselves up for that failure by spending so much goddamn money on it, and like that's true of all of this stuff, is like they spent so much money on so many of these movies, and then like with no evidence that people were ready to go back out and take these movies in. In fact, a lot of evidence to the contrary.
With evidence that Maverick made all that money and Avatar made all that money. But the problem was they were behemoths in a field of minnows. Right. Like the only thing that was going to be grabbing the hook was Top Gun Maverick, was Avatar The Way of Water. And then because we saw those successes, everybody was like, we could populate this, like it's a stocked pond. Summer Cinematic Offerings 2023 is such a stocked pond that like everybody's getting caught, but not enough.
I mean, we're going to need to, like, the Top Gun Maverick conversation is going to be real interesting in a couple of weeks when we are looking at Mission Impossible and seeing what that does.
This week, Mission Impossible comes out on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And here,
did you find that stuff that you were
I have it. No.
Okay.
So the list of movies that came out with The Flash, the number one is now The Flash, followed by Shazam! Fury of the Gods, then Wonder Woman 1984 with 137 million in losses, Dark Phoenix with 133 million. That's technically a Fox film.
Yeah,
too,
keep in mind that
right?
That was Fox Marvel. That was not Disney Marvel, right?
The Suicide Squad with 130 million. Black Adam with 100 million, which again is a movie that like now they're saying was the last good DC movie, still in the top 10 as a huge loss. Fant Four Stick, or Fantastic Four 2015 with 100 million.
Now, who made that one?
That's one also Fox.
That was also Fox Marvel. Yep. Yeah. Keep going.
R.I.P.D., I guess the dark horse in this, Because I'm an asshole. I apologize for being that guy.
R.I.P.D. Man, I forgot about that goofy ass movie.
R.I.P.D. that just had a sequel drop on Netflix to some notoriety, like that people watch.
A sequel that had a completely different cast, right? It's like a different time period.
It's like the past. It's like the setting up of the Rest in Peace department. I haven't watched it. I really want to, but I forget about Netflix.
From Burn Notice, right?
It's Jeffrey Donovan.
Jeffrey Donovan, yeah, hell yeah.
I'm very excited. He's been great on the new Law and Order. Number 9 is The New Mutants, which was a Fox X-Men movie that was then later released by Disney after like 7 fucking delays. And
well, right. So that movie got made, and then it was then Fox that got bought, right?
Yep.
Like that was in that whole mess of Disney's going to come in and buy Fox, and one of the first things they did is we're not releasing this movie. Like Disney was just like, we're not. This movie's just not going to come out, and it was kind of this weird back and forth between I don't know, like artists involved and stuff like that. It got like reshot in a bunch of different ways. It ended up hitting the screen with like incorrect like dedication to the artist. Wasn't the artist's name like spelled wrong? Like in the credits?
He was like. It was that disheartening to go see this movie that I have been waiting to see, and for them to spell my fucking name wrong.
Right. Yeah. Like so yeah. Fox Marvel made and then released only by the good graces of Disney because they were like, all right, if you really want to see it. But somebody at Disney Marvel was smart enough to know at one point we should probably not put this movie out. And then everybody was like, oh, but we wanna.
I'll say this: The New Mutants. One of my teams of X-Men, something that I was really looking forward to. And as a movie, it was a solid movie. But after all the time that it had been left to like decay on the shelf, there was no reason that they should have released it.
Yeah.
None at all. Like along the same line of something that we've talked about on the show, the Snyder Cut of Justice League. If WB was not going to rally and continue that story where Snyder's original cut was coming from, then there was no reason for them to do that movie.
Yeah.
There
was 1 or 2 under New Mutants on that list though, right?
There's one more. At number 10, Green Lantern from 2011. So just looking at this established, there's 6 DC films that are on this list, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those 6 movies all came out 2021 or later. So like that's crazy. That Green Lantern, a film from 10 years before Wonder Woman 1984, is the 10th one on that list. Like, I get where people are coming from with like, oh my God. Because think of the movies that came out in that time, right? So you discount Iron Man the first, you discount Hulk the first, and then everything else came out post Green Lantern. So what's that? 24 Marvel films that were like profitable despite huge budgets? Like, I understand
when we're
the
talking
fear.
MCU proper,
yeah,
profitable to the point where they don't even make that list. Noticeably, you know what I thought the second that list came out? Quantumania is not on that list.
I mean, that's interesting because disastrous, like Screen Rant's 10 disastrous comic book movies that lost the most money does have Punisher, Warzone, Catwoman, and Quantumania on that list. So I don't know how that is being decided, but like that's 3 additional movies, one of them being Quantumania, and Quantumania being this film that is like what started to scare Disney. And then Disney has had success with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but then failure after failure. Like, the second feather they can put in their cap is that Elemental has made $100 million in the box office, and it is the first original animated feature to do that since like 2018 or some ridiculous.
I mean, I think that, I think Disney is maybe doing better at kind of accepting that their movies are not maybe going to be huge money makers, but they are taking the biggest hits because they're putting the biggest movies out, right? That's just going to be the nature of that. Whereas like WB is just struggling like across the board, and it's because of all of their movies. Because that's the other thing is we're talking a lot about their superhero movies because those are their expensive ones, but they've also been struggling with all their other films too. I mean, I think they're banking hard on Oppenheimer, right? Because that's WB and Nolan's whole WB stuff, right?
So we said what we said about Mission Impossible and how that's going to be for like what's going to happen regarding the whole Maverick of it all, the Top Gun Maverick of it all. The reason why Tom Cruise was so pissed that Barbie and Oppenheimer were coming out on the same day originally was because it wasn't going to have that time alone in the sun to like soak up a bunch of rays.
Honestly, that Maverick gut. I think he was pissed because he was like, "Shit, this is not going to have the same impact Maverick did," because he recognized these.
He recognized that, but rather than like he can't admit that, right? Because then you're playing the calculus all wrong. You have to try to make it so that it has as much time in the sun as possible, and that's what a week it has. Because Oppenheimer, I think, is the 21st. Oppenheimer and Barbie. I'm gonna look at that.
But then, this is, as we get towards the end of our episode today, like we should point out, like I was saying, it's not just these bigger movies that they're really having issues with, because look at everything going on Max with the app, and like the release of a new Superman show that I didn't even know was coming.
A show that had been talked about in 2021 as being a Cartoon Network series, and then was sort of stealth released to Adult Swim, which is internally considered a whole separate channel from Cartoon Network. These are also things that we will dive deeper into because time has gone. Have you watched My Adventures with Superman?
No, and this will give me time too now.
Yeah, so now you'll have the time too.
Like you mentioned what it was, and I've now since like looked at it, and I'm like, oh, I could maybe watch this if somebody had told me this was a thing that was happening in the world, and I'm sure they did. It's just that like, as I am not a guy that is out there watching TV on the reg, as I am not a guy that is like keeping up on what's coming to streaming services this week, like I hear about things as they, as the world kind of talks about them, and the world has not been talking about this show.
Yeah. Well, here's the bigger issue with it. I go through the listings, right, every once in a while on Cartoon Network to see if there's something new on Adult Swim that I should be interested in, which a lot of stuff is coming that I had no idea was coming because I looked at TV premiering in July, but that can also be addressed next week. And it said Thursday night at noon, new show, and it was The Adventures of Superman, but the title of the first two episodes are Adventures of a Normal Man, Part 1 and Part 2. And that's what's big in the TV listing, is that. So I thought it was some Adult Swim show called Normal Man. And it was the first two episodes, Adventures of a Normal Man. I had no idea that it was Superman at all until the next day where one of the YouTube things was talking about Superman now transforms like Sailor Moon. And I'm like, what? I should check out this show that I didn't know. And then I saw it and I'm like, oh yeah, it's the anime show that they talked about in 2021. And now,
and that's the other thing I want to look into is that this anime style was probably in 2021 and a unique thing for them to announce. But anybody that's been watching Warner Brothers DC animated movies over the last 3-4 years, that is the standard style now for that universe. So the idea that it was like a cool thing for them to like introduce 2 or 3 years ago as like we're doing an anime Superman, like cool then, but actually I've seen an anime Superman in 2 different movies now. So
yeah, and it's more of the slice of life style anime as opposed to like Dynazenon or
it
SSSS
sounds like
Gridman.
remember that time that there was like that entire run of Superman where he just walked across the earth and everybody was like, this is literally just like a story about Superman walking. He doesn't even fly. Like it sounds like they're doing that. And that didn't hit so great back then in the comics, so I'm curious why they thought it would be a fun thing to do on television.
Well, I hope that you can watch it before our next episode, and that we can discuss it, because here's my like elevator pitch, and then we got to get going, is I don't know who this show is for. I don't know the target audience. And that is the craziest thing. Having watched 2 episodes and being somebody who knows a thing about Superman, I'm like, oh, these are cool. But, like, that wasn't for me that you included that.
Right.
Like the fact that I know it almost made me feel, like, kind of upset because I knew where things were going to go. And, like... So there's that of it. Okay. But yeah, we are on a timer. This is our hard out. So Sejohn, anything you want to add before I give the people the information?
No. This has been a fun one, folks. Play some Street Fighter. I will see you on the streets.
Yes. Okay. Mark, thank you again for allowing me to borrow your copy. I am now going to head out to return it to you because I don't want to get too much further in it. If you are out there and you have thoughts about Street Fighter or the death of cinema at the movie theater or any of the things we talked about this week, you can find us on Twitter at The Say Report. And since Sejohn is no longer on Twitter, if you have messages specifically for Sejohn, that is the best and only way to get in touch with him. So make sure...
Yeah. Sorry. Did you say at Say Report?
Yeah, so I was just to make sure at the Say Report, and then that you mention that you specifically want the message to go to Sejohn, and I'll forward it along to him.
I got excited because my throw to Dev is, if you want to see some buck wild shit, ask him about character pictures for me and him from Street Fighter.
Oh.
Just hit him up at Devon D. Decker and say what you look like.
Here's the deal. I was about to do the edit on this and then post up our character photos as the tease for what this episode is going to be. So hopefully you already saw them. If not, they're on one of our social media locations. So go look for it. And I don't know if he said it, but I am at Devon D. Decker on Twitter. I
did, but it's cool.
I'm just so excited. I mean, I named my character in Street Fighter at Devon D. Decker in case any of the photos went out.
Boston Bod.
That's good. Did you get the Boston glasses for your Boston bod or no?
Well, I did, but I don't wear glasses. So, yeah, but take a look at the pictures.
Take a look at the pictures. All right. Thanks for stopping by. Will, get us the hell out of here. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host, Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.